speaking video 101. Okay, so today we are talking about intellectual dishonesty. And to be honest, per usual, I've thought about, okay, not even just per usual, like this is, I usually say that I've thought about whatever I'm talking about in the video for a while, but this is something that I've really been thinking a lot about. And if you keep up with me on YouTube, Twitter, wherever, you might have noticed that I have been becoming more and more, I guess the best way to say it is a critical thinker, inviting more skepticism. Granted, my thing is, I personally, I don't like to reward skepticism. Like, I think that there's a unspoken superiority that we tend to reward people who are skeptics with, and I don't really like that personally, because I feel like just because you're skeptical and you question every single thing and nitpick at it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not better than someone, and also you're not smarter than other people. It doesn't always mean that, at least. But if you are a healthy skeptic, in my opinion, I think I really deeply respect them. And if those are the people that were, I guess, not putting on a pedestal, but like just appreciating, then by all means, I want to continue to assert that. So that being said, when it comes to intellectual dishonesty, the things I've been thinking about is pretty much biases, phenomena. Like a lot of times people are either intentionally intellectually dishonest or they're unintentionally intellectually dishonest. For those of you who know Myers-Briggs, I know this is an ENFJ telling you a TI inferior. Technically, apparently the lower your TI is, then the more prone to intellectual dishonesty that you are. And I can definitely see that. And I think that's why I'm talking about it, to be honest. Because I've seen, as I look back, just how much intellectual dishonesty I've fallen into unintentionally. I feel like I've never intentionally tried to be intellectually dishonest. I do know people who are, like, that you'll present certain reasoning to them, certain claims, and they want to continue to just see things the way that they want to, because it's just gonna warp their worldview, and they're not ready for that, and that's okay. And I've seen people, who confirmation biases, like they will legitimately look up information that will just back up whatever they already think, and then some people do what I did, which to me is it was an unintentional intellectual dishonesty, whereas just an example, it's like I've always been into apologetics, which for those of you who don't know, it's pretty much the study of proving Christianity, like reasons and claims to prove Christianity, the Christian faith, to be real. So it's looking at historical documents and looking at just a lot of reasoning, like, okay, so what's this mean, like looking at it from an intellectual and historical bent, rather than just like, oh, you just have to believe kind of thing. It's finding reason and support. So every single Bible that I've had, aside from maybe like my first Bible ever, was an apologetic study Bible. And it has different blurbs in it and all of that, to like say, yeah, back in the 18th century we found this, which then coincides with this, and when you look at this scripture, the boom, boom. So it's stuff to like give you reason to logically believe, like, okay, this is a secure space, secure ground to believe in, and if, at the very least, if I claim to be a Christian, nobody should be able to look at me as if I'm stupid, because I have worthy claims on why I should believe them. And even if it doesn't necessarily prove Christianity to be real, like empirically, it's enough to make people be like, okay, in that case, I can see how you thought through this and yada yada yada. That makes sense. I still don't really buy into it, but I get it. And I feel like, for those of you who checked out my blogs, watched my YouTube videos and everything, like, you can see that. So that is just an example. This isn't here to talk about it. But I feel like real intellectual honesty is being able to kind of like what I try to do with politics. It's being able to be aware of where your biases are. So personally speaking, I'm not really big on politics. I feel like I'm too good at being able to see both sides, and that's not saying it in an elitist way, but it's just like when I'm hanging out with my relative, who I really deeply respect, that's a Republican, and he's like saying all of these things, then I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense, and then I have to ask him, but what would a Democrat say to those things? Because all of what you're saying, it seems to make complete sense, but there's intelligent people on the other side. So are you aware of the things that they'd say? And now you have to think about, like, okay, is this guy gonna straw man? Like, the Democrats, they'll just say something stupid, like boom, 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 boom. Because if he does do that, then it's like, okay, he's not being intellectually honest. It's like, I'm pretty sure that not all the Democrats, that you're too deep on your own side and your own interpretation of things that you can't even really see the other side's perspective. That's why you're insulting it. But if he's like, yeah, actually they have some good points here and this, that, and I can see where they're coming from over here. Actually, I kind of agree with this part, but it just doesn't really, like, for me, I think my counter would be this, and boom, boom. I respect that. I think that's intellectual honesty, because it's like, okay, I'm aware of where my biases are and where I'm just choosing, but I'm also aware enough of the counter arguments to be like, okay, this is what's kind of like going on over here, rather than just dismissing it. You know what I mean? And I feel like I've never been the type to just immediately dismiss, but I have been the type to believe that I'm just right. Like, I have so much reason to believe this right now. How could anybody, if they disagree, then that means that they just haven't seen enough of the claims that I have. They haven't seen enough of what I've researched and all of that. And it's like, I see how there's someone like me in just about every camp. And that's saying something. I personally still do believe in an absolute truth. That means, it is to me, that regardless of whatever I might think, there's still always just going to be the truth there. So to me, truth is not relative. Truth is absolute. Whether the world is a globe or a flat square, whatever it might be, it's not going to change based off of just what I think. Whether God is real or not is not going to change just because I think that he's real or not. You know what I mean? There has to be a truth that's there. But I think that many of us, even if we might have the truth or the answer, our perception of it is warped as human beings. Because as human beings, it's impossible to be without bias. We can try as hard as we can, but we're just always going to have some bent toward a bias in one way or another. And the most dangerous things is not knowing where your biases come from. And sometimes it's hard to really be aware of like where your biases are. And then especially if you're not really that good of a critical thinker, a lot of times, and it takes practice, you know. All that being said, that's where I think that intellectual honesty comes from. Intellectual honesty is being able to really just search for the truth the best way that you can. Because my personal opinion is that a lot of things, a lot of truths, unfortunately, we'll never know, because so many historians say one thing and they say another thing. Like, I remember I was watching this guy from the Bible Project a few months ago, and he was breaking down. He's a very respectful guy. I really respect him. He has all these PhDs and all of that, and he seems like an intellectually honest guy. So I do respect him, like I said. But I remember at the end, toward the end of his like 2-hour breakdown of how the Bible was created and all of this, which is very informative. If you want to check it out, actually, it could be like a little white thing popping up at the top, where I'll link you in the description. Like I said, I thought it was pretty informative. But in that presentation, the dude was like, never listen to anything the History Channel tells you about how the Bible was created. And I'm like, now, if this was me like 2 years ago, I would easily just gobble that up. But, oh yeah, all right, then I'm not gonna eat that up. You know what I mean? Like, so if the History Channel says anything, or if somebody tells me that they got their information from the History Channel, that's wrong. You know? But now that I'm aware of my own biases, then wonderful. Okay. Anyway. Now that I'm aware of my own biases, I'm like, well, but what if, kind of like what I did with the whole Democrats versus Republican things, like, well, what would the History Channel say? And then I'd want to see if he's going to strawman it, you know, where he's just going to be like, yeah, they just say something like this, and they don't even know what they're talking about. So, well, how do you know that they don't know what they're talking about? Because they could easily say the same thing about you. I could go watch the History Channel, and they'd be like, oh, that's what that Christian guy told you? Let me guess, he learned that from his Bible school, right? And he's telling you not to listen to us. Doesn't the Bible school have an agenda to make sure that by all means, at the end of the day, you still continue to believe in the Bible? But just in the same way that, you know, if you have an agenda, to where it's like by the end of the day you're trying to get someone to not believe in the Bible, then that's also still a bias. You know what I mean? So being intellectually honest is being aware of, okay, this is the bias that I can fall into. That doesn't mean that whatever I believe or that what I'm being told is wrong or is right. It just means that now I can view how right or wrong it really is. And that is incredibly infuriating at times. For some reason, Siri decided to pop up after I said that. Anyway, like I said, that is incredibly infuriating to me at times. Because someone like me, I just want to know what the truth is. Whether it's going to hurt me or not, I will deal with that. Now, I do believe that ignorance is bliss to an extent. There's just some things that I'm just not ready to know at certain times, and I needed to believe something that wasn't true during that time. Like, I like to think of Space Jam. If you've seen the movie, hopefully the first one, toward the end, where Michael Jordan gives all the Looney Tunes that water bottle, and it's the placebo effect. You know, like they all of a sudden believed that the water, they didn't even know that, they thought that it was like some magic potion that made them all of a sudden really strong and this, that. And they were winning after that. But really, it was just water. I think that sometimes that's what you need. Sometimes you need to believe a lie in order to get through certain points. And sometimes believing the lie is what will make that lie become true, because you've put power into it, you know? And then I guess that's where like faith comes in a lot of times. You believe so much that God is going to show up. God is going to do this. God is going to help you here. God is going to do that, whatever. And you believe that until your world, you manifest it. Your world just comes together in a certain way that's like, hey, he showed up, you know? Doesn't work for everyone. I will tell you that. But I think that when you're intellectually honest with yourself, you become more aware of these things. And that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to bring up this idea of intellectual honesty, radical honesty too. You know, in my video on how I deal with people who dislike me, I talked about being radically honest with myself. Am I annoying? Am I really, I don't know, a know-it-all? Am I really to this? Am I really passive-aggressive? All of these things, I have to like look myself in the face and be honest with myself, and then be like, okay, how do I feel about this? And I feel like that type of thinking really just helps a lot, because then you're able to, once again, you're mitigating your biases, or at least being aware of them. I feel like you don't even have to get rid of biases. Again, nobody can ever really get rid of all their biases, but if you can at least be aware. I don't know what's good with that heater, but it's too cold to turn it off, so I'm gonna keep it running. Almost done anyway. But if you're at least aware of your biases, then you can be aware of if somebody's bringing you a different perspective, where it could like, you know, be like, okay, yeah, that could be true. Personally, I lean on this, and these are my reasons why, but I can actually see why you lean on that, and your reasons make sense too, even if I don't adopt them for myself. And I think that's pretty dope. That's really respectful, you know, because until you're able to actually find certain things out, like empirically, everything is just reason and what we think, you know. So be honest with yourself, and be honest with what you find, and try to mitigate your biases, or at least be aware of your biases. If you're watching the news, don't just watch CNN and don't just watch Fox, but don't also just exclude them. Try to watch all of them, because you'll see all these different vantage points, and then you're able to better understand what might actually be the case. If you're trying to find out which faith/religion, like, maybe it's a good idea to start like looking at, you know, the counter arguments towards yours, and not just from other people who are in your faith, but like look at those too, but also look at the people who are just trying to be real. Like, hey, we're not trying to attack Christianity. We just want to know the truth just as much as hopefully you do. So this is what we found. Make with that as you will. Oh, okay, you know, that makes sense, you know, whatever. Because, you know, there's going to be people who they're going to do whatever they can to just prove it right. And there's going to be people who are just like what I explained, like they don't have anything against it, but they're just trying to look for what the truth is, the best of their ability. And there's going to be people who are very antagonistic against it, and they're going to try to attack it and all of that. And you're going to have this with just about every topic. So I say, try to find that middle ground. If you were truly trying to be intellectually honest, because I think that's where the most intellectually honest people are. And if you know that you're not ready for certain truths, that's okay. I don't think that it's a maturity thing, personally. I think that some people honestly really don't need to know certain things, because again, ignorance is bliss to an extent. And I'm just a huge proponent for that. There's just certain things I don't think I have to know, you know, because just knowing it will hurt me. And that's what's actually going to be hurting me, the fact that I know it, rather than the actual thing itself. I think I talked about this in my video on me dissecting the movie Her. Like, as crazy as it sounds, it's like at the end of the movie, he was, like, pretty much, as a long story short, like the guy falls in love with an artificial intelligence, and the artificial intelligence is pretty much like having 600 something partners, but it's an artificial intelligence. So even though she's interacting with 600 other people in a romantic sense, the guy, he was like, well, how many other people are you talking to right now? And I'm like, why does that even matter? She's artificial intelligence. She's still, like, if anything, it would have been better if you weren't even aware of how many other people that she was talking to, because she's still, whether she's talking to 600 people or not, it doesn't affect that dynamic, but it's your knowledge of it that's affecting it now. It'd be different if all of a sudden she's like, sorry, I was gone. I was talking to Joe Schmo down the street and whatever. It's like, that's different. But if it, like, literally is not affecting you guys in any way and it's just your own thought, then some things you just don't have to know, unless if you're ready to know it and just be like, okay. So yeah, there's just certain things that I know that I'm like, yeah, you know what? I don't think I want to know that. Because I know how I'm going to think about it. I know how it's going to affect me, even if the thing itself is not affecting me. And I think that's being aware of my bias enough to still be considered intellectually honest, but at the same time, not really I guess wanting to face it. And that, in my opinion, is okay. So, yeah. Those are some of my thoughts that I was having today. I would love to know what y'all think about this. Give me your opinions, feedback, questions, concerns, and yeah, let's make the conversation done.